And good morning once again, my brothers and sisters in Jesus Christ. I want to welcome you to another study. And today's a very special day. I want to say a very happy birthday to my lovely bride. I hope you have a great day. Hey, well, here we go into the study. And we're in Acts chapter 12. And Acts chapter 12 is a fascinating chapter because in it, God shows his sovereign control over our lives and over history. It's very fascinating to see how God works. In fact, let me just get to it and we'll talk about it. When you get to 12:1, you read this. About that time, Herod the king laid violent hands on some who belonged to the church. So we're looking at persecution again. Christianity is viewed by some as a sect of Judaism, and people like Saul, for instance, have been trying to destroy the church. At least he did until his conversion in chapter 9. But the political system is still against Jesus as well because, again, what's the greatest threat to a sitting king? Another king. And who is the King of Kings and Lord of Lords? Jesus. The people are giving their hearts to the Lord. They're serving him as their king. The earthly kings don't like that. They want to stop it if they can. So, Herod has the power to lay violent hands on some who belong to the church. And we're told he killed James, the brother of John, with the sword. Just like that, one verse. Now, think about this. James, who's this guy? Watch this. Matthew 17, the transfiguration. And after 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John, his brother, and led them up to a high mountain by themselves, and he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as light. So this James, Peter, James, and John, he's part of the three disciples that oftentimes go and have special training. He's there, Peter, James, and John, at the raising of Jairus' daughter. When Jesus goes to the Garden of Gethsemane, he takes Peter, James, and John with him, separate from the other disciples, as he prays. This is James, fully trained, fully equipped, a disciple, a follower of Jesus Christ, one who's been with him all through his ministry. And here James gets one verse. Herod arrests him. He kills James, the brother of John, with a sword. Bam. End of the verse. Why would God let that happen? Well, really, that's the wrong question because God is sovereignly in control of our lives. He determines how he brings glory to his name through our lives. And James is a good example. Fully trained, fully equipped, could obviously be used in 1,000 different ways to help this early church expand. And yet God says, James, my will for you is for you to be the second martyr recorded in the New Testament, and we're not even going to talk about it. You're not going to get a big speech, nothing like Stephen had. You're just going to get thrown into a jail cell and run through by the sword. But God determines what he wants for us and how he'll use our lives to bring glory to his name. Now, watch this. And when that's Herod, when he saw that it pleased the Jews, notice the enemies of Jesus and the followers of Jesus are still the enemies that Jesus confronted in his ministry. This Jewish population that will not yield themselves to their Messiah is now trying to kill the people that have yielded themselves to the Messiah. So Herod sees that the Jews are happy about it. He proceeds to arrest Peter also. And this was during the days of unleavened bread. So hey, it was great with James. Let's do it to Peter. And just think how my poll numbers are going to rise. I'm going to be so popular with the Jews. Well, and when he had seized him, he put him in prison, delivering him over to 4 squads of soldiers to guard him. This is a lot of guards, over a dozen, probably about 16 soldiers to guard him, intending after the Passover to bring him out to the people. So Herod puts him on the shelf. I'm going to kill you after the Passover, and I'll be so popular. All right, Herod has a plan. He's working his plan out. He carried his plan out with James. James was executed in verse 2. Here's the plan. He's going to get Peter. What does the text tell us? So Peter was kept in prison. But look at this. But earnest prayer for him was made to God by the church. The church gathers. The church prays. This word earnest has the idea of being stretched out. They are earnestly going before God on behalf of Peter. Full strength. The whole community of faith. What does God do? Well, when Herod was about to bring him out, on that very night, Peter was sleeping between two soldiers. And just stop there for a moment. What's Peter doing, knowing that James has just been executed? He's been arrested. The execution isn't going to happen during the Passover, but we're just waiting for a day or two before we kill him. What's Peter doing? He's sleeping. Why? He's not nervous. He's resting in the knowledge that God is sovereignly in control, and God is able to determine how his life is going to be used for God's glory. He's sleeping between two soldiers, bound with two chains, and sentries before the door were guarding the prison. Verse 6, Herod has done everything he can do to make sure that when he opens that jail door, when it's time to kill Peter, that Peter's right there. But God is sovereignly in control. And behold, an angel of the Lord stood next to him, and a light shone in the cell. He struck Peter on the side and woke him, saying, "Get up quickly." And the chains fell off his hands. The angel of God visits Peter in this locked up, chained up position. The chains fall off. The angel says, "Get up." The guards are helpless. They're not even talked about here. They have nothing to respond with because they have been supernaturally dealt with. There is no more effort on their behalf because God has stopped them. The angel said to him, "Dress yourself, put on your sandals." And he did so. And he said to him, "Wrap your cloak around you and follow me." Hey, Peter, get up, get dressed. We're leaving. There it is. What happens next? Well, he went out and followed him. Peter is simply walking with the angel as the angel leads him out of this jail. He did not know that what was being done by the angel was real, but he thought he was seeing a vision. I mean, how many people get a heavenly jailbreak? And here Peter's experiencing a heavenly jailbreak, and he's not even sure it's reality. He might be dreaming it. He might be seeing it in a vision. All right, but when they had passed the first and then the second guard, they came to the iron gate leading into the city. It opened for them of its own accord, and they went out and went along one street, and immediately the angel left him. Wow. So the angel just offers Peter a heavenly jailbreak. Hey, get up, get dressed, let's go. And as they walk out of the jail, all the guards are, not dismantled, but they are put in a place where they can't respond. The gates that are locked just swing open. The angel shows Peter that it's not a dream. Here I'm taking you right out into the street. I'm going to leave you here. But Peter, I've accomplished my purpose. You are free. God has sovereign control over all of our circumstances. Peter's walking with the Lord. He's praying. He knows Jesus. He's in Jesus' hands. He knows he can sleep in the midst of his terrible circumstance because God is in control. And God does what? Gives him a heavenly jailbreak. Now, just a little side note. I hope we have time for this. But just imagine going to James's funeral. Sitting there in James's funeral, you know, Peter's mom and James' mom sitting together. Hey, you know, James' mom says, "My son was killed by the sword in the prison of Herod." And Peter's mom says, "Well, my son was given a heavenly jailbreak, and he's still running around out there preaching the gospel." And those two ladies can look at each other and go, "Why?" Well, you have to remember that God is in control. We surrender our lives to God. We deny ourselves. We take up our cross. We follow him. He gets to determine where it is he wants to take us. He gets to determine how he wants to use our lives. Very critical thing to understand. So now we see Peter sitting out in the middle of the street, free. When Peter came to himself, he said, "Now I'm sure that the Lord has sent his angel and rescued me from the hand of Herod and from all the Jewish people," all that the Jewish people were expecting. They were getting ready to come to an execution. But God said, "No, not you, Peter. You're not going that way." When he realized this, he went to the house of Mary, the mother of John, who, let me get myself out of the way here, the mother of John, whose other name was Mark, where many were gathered together. And what are they doing? They're praying. I don't think we really fully appreciate what it is to God when his people gather and pray. I mean, so few people in the church come to prayer. It's like they're just too busy. They're not going to pay attention, even though God has admonished us over and over and over. Pray without ceasing. The New Testament example of the church is they gather for prayer. Still, most Christians won't do it. They have other things to do. But I want you to see in Acts chapter 12 that the church body gathers and prays and plays an integral part in God's move on Peter's behalf as they pray. God listens. He tells us to cast our cares on him because he cares for us, and here we see an example of it. And now we're going to see the rest of the story. And when he knocked, so Peter's at the door. When he knocked at the door of the gateway, this servant girl named Rhoda, a modern day translation would be Rose, came to answer. Recognizing Peter's voice, in her joy, she did not open the gate, but ran in and reported that Peter was standing at the gate. This is kind of comical, isn't it? He's there, he's been given a heavenly jailbreak, and they won't open the door for him. They said to her, "You are out of your mind." Notice, the church is praying, but the church doesn't really believe. But she kept insisting that it was so, and they kept saying, "It must be his angel." But Peter continued knocking, and when they opened, they saw him and were amazed. God answers their prayer, does the miracle, and still they're having trouble believing it. But motioning to them with his hand to be silent, he described to them how the Lord had brought him out of the prison. And he said, "Tell these things to James and to the brothers." This is James, the half-brother of Jesus. Then he departed and went to another place. So Peter greets the family of God, explains the situation, and gets out of there. Now, when day came, there was no little disturbance among the soldiers over what had become of Peter. Can you imagine? The door to the jail house is still locked. All the chains are laying there. The guards are waking up from their stupor, and they're looking around. What happened to Peter? And after Herod searched for him and did not find him, he examined the centuries and ordered that they should be put to death. Well, that's quite a penalty, but that's the way it was. If you failed in your mission as a sentry or as a guard, it cost you your life. What does Herod do? Well, then he went down from Judea to Caesarea, and he spent time there. Herod heads to the coast. He's done with this. He doesn't want to deal with this anymore. He gets out of town as well. Now, Herod was angry with the people of Tyre and Sidon. That's a whole nother story. He has power over them. He's hurt them. He's cut off their food supplies. He's using his power to hurt the people of Tyre and Sidon. So they came to him with one accord, and having persuaded Blastus, the king's chamberlain, they asked for peace because their country depended on the king's country for food. They are trying to make some sort of pact with Herod in Acts 12:20. But what are we told? On an appointed day, Herod put his royal robes, and he took his seat upon the throne, and he delivered an oration to them. Okay, so now we see this guy who thinks he's all that, and he's the king, and he has power, and he has power over these people. He gathers them. He's going to speak to them. And this is where we really see the sovereignty of God again. And the people were shouting, the voice of a God and not of a man. Well, it wasn't uncommon at all for Roman leaders to be declared to be God. In fact, one of the things that the Roman Empire imposed on civilizations that they conquered was, we'll let you keep your religion, we'll let you keep your customs, but you've got to worship Caesar as God. Most cultures had no problem with that, but of course the Jewish culture rebelled against that strongly because they worship only God. And we see over history there's all kinds of trouble between Rome and Israel over these things. Well, here we see a good example of people that are willing to speak it out loud. Hey, Herod, we think you're a god. Of course, they're trying to manipulate him, trying to get him to ease these restrictions on their food supply. But nonetheless, Herod accepts their worship. What happens? Immediately, an angel of the Lord struck him down. What do we see? God is in sovereign control over history. God eliminates evil on his time frame. He struck him down because he did not give God the glory. And he was eaten by worms and breathed his last. So there he is, giving his oration. He receives worship and he dies. He dies an ugly death. But the word of God increased and multiplied. There we go. God's sovereignty. The purposes of God move forward despite all that oppose God. And those who follow God are dependent on him to show them what will bring him the most glory through their lives. The word of God increased and moves forward. In fact, along those lines, we're told Barnabas and Saul returned from Jerusalem when they had completed their service, bringing with them John, whose other name was Mark. This John is going to accompany them on a missionary journey, as we'll see. And this is a big transition in the book of Acts. We're now going to move into chapter 13. Peter's going to fade away, and Paul is going to become the central figure of the next few chapters. But let's just go back to this question of the three conclusions. One, God determines how our lives will bring him glory. Whether you're James and get run through by the sword, or you're Peter and you get a heavenly jailbreak, we entrust our lives to God for him to accomplish his purpose in our lives. God answers the church's prayers. Church, we need to really pay attention to this and gather to pray earnestly before the Lord, because he does hear. He is sovereignly in control, and God does destroy his enemies. To be an enemy of God is the most foolish thing any person can ever choose to be. And yet in our pride, many people choose that. God forbid that that's us. Let us yield our lives to the Lord today. And remember that he is sovereignly in control over us. When we pray to him, he listens and responds. And that all evildoers will be destroyed at the hand of God in his time. Wow. I pray you serve him well today, church. God bless you.
Who is it who for sinners shed his blood, and now for cleansing all can plunge beneath that flood? It's Jesus. But do you know who he is? He's the image of the invisible God, and he's the brightness of his glory, the first, the last, the future, the past. He is God.